This episode of Adventures in Alchemy is brought to you by the Moon and Magic Planner, 13 Moons of 2020. Plan on magic for 2020. Magic just doesn't happen. You have to plan on it. And this planner has plenty of ideas and spaces for creating magic. It celebrates the moons instead of the months. It follows the cycles of nature. It has pages to share your word of the year, your intentions, an oracle reading for the year. It also has spaces for your incantations, full and new moon rituals, working with waxing and waning moon energy, planner pages to script out your best year, and weekly pages that include the oracle of the week, along with magical notes, spells, and recipes that you may be working with, or experiments, right? And also you can track all of your magical habits here because these habits really build up our own connection to magic in the world. And it's just brimming with magical energy for you to have the most magical 2020 yet. How many times did I say magical? Too many. But go to the show notes and check out the link, or just go to www.dailyalchemy.com and scroll down to about the middle of the page and you'll find a big button that'll take you right there where you can see the brand new gorgeous cover for 2020. Hi, I'm Michelle Martin Dobbins, the creator of dailyalchemy.com and the Moon and Magic Planner. Welcome to another episode of Adventures in Alchemy, where we share tips, techniques, and true stories to support you in using magic, witchcraft, and alchemy to right wrongs, heal generational wounds, create synchronicity, and re-enchant your world. I charm this podcast episode to be of service, to allow divine ideas to come through, and to bring value to all who listen. Now, on with the show. Hey there, guys. Today we are going to revisit last week's episode about 3 misconceptions about magic, because as I've thought about it, there are quite a few more and some that I really want to share with you. So I'm going to go ahead and jump right in with number 1. And number 1 is me backpedaling a little bit on number 1 from last week, because I said that you don't need to believe to have magic work. And I think this is one of those paradoxes, right? So I don't think you necessarily do need to believe to have magic work, but you may need something. Maybe that's intention or hope or faith, or maybe even action, although I have been proven wrong, okay? So I had someone bring up to me the book Real Magic by Dean Radin, and it's on my list, and it's actually in my Audible library, and I hadn't listened or read it yet, but I did listen to an interview with him a while back. Trying to remember, I can't remember for sure. I think it may have been on Rune Soup. So in this book, I know just enough about it to be dangerous, but I will put a link to it in the show notes, and I am going to read it. But he shares a lot, and I do remember a little bit from the interview, he shares a lot of like scientific facts about like research showing that magic works. But one of the things that he showed, according to a person that I spoke to, which I totally believe, is that a lot of the research that they did showed that it worked when people believed in it. So kind of like the placebo effect, right? Like I believe that there was a research where if the monks blessed the tea, then people felt better. They had blessings given to them only if they believed that they would. And strangely enough, they may or may have not, I think, don't quote me on this, but they may or may not even have known that the tea had been blessed, but that they had somehow expressed that they would believe, they believed in magic, or they believed that these Tibetan monks could bless the tea. So I find it really interesting because there are so many paradoxes in magic and in like everything all around magic. As I said last time, when I say magic, I'm talking about ceremonial magic, chaos magic, witchcraft, law of attraction, alchemy, all those things that kind of fit in there. And, ancestor work, shadow work, all those to me that are kind of beyond our physical understanding how they work. And maybe science is figuring out more and more of how they work, but there still seems to be such a paradox there. And I say it all the time that, the difference between alchemy and chemistry is that chemistry is supposed to work the same for everybody, and alchemy depends upon the practitioner. And I think magic is the same way. So I have done so many things where I didn't believe 100%, but I believed enough to do it, right? I believed enough to take the action. Last week, I talked about making a goal book that I had read about in the Chicken Soup for the Soul. And this was something I did at the kind of the beginning of my journey. I was 22, I think. And I had, was recently out of college and had read this Chicken Soup for the Soul book. And I made this booklet with all these pages and stuff. And a lot of there was that thing running through my head saying, this is not going to work. This is silly. You're going to look at these pictures every day and what's going to happen, right? But I think that I had some kind of faith or hope and I took action, right? I did, I wouldn't have had any effect if I had looked at it and said, oh yeah, I don't believe in that, so I'm not going to do it. I did it. I kind of suspended my disbelief. Even though it was back there in the back of my head, I still took action. I think that might be part of it. Action denotes a certain level of belief or faith or hope. And I'm not good enough with all the word meanings and the semantics of that to know which word would needle it down to what the perfect thing is. But I still don't think we have to believe 100%, but we definitely have to take action. All the things that I ended up in the back of my head saying this is not going to work, I still did them. I still did the ancestor magic steps. I'm saying magic, but it's ancestor medicine from Daniel 4. Still worked all of the steps in his book and at his workshop. And they worked, even though I don't know why, and doesn't matter to me. That's kind of where I come from. And that's why I'm really glad that people like Dean Radin are around for a lot of people who have more scientific minds. My daughter is like this. She wants to know why things work and she wants more of the scientific stuff, even though she does work with magic and she does work with alchemy, but she kind of cares why things work. She's much more scientifically minded. I'm just I don't care. If it works, it works. It doesn't matter to me. And so in one way, you can say, well, that makes it not as reproducible if I don't know why it works, if I got this result. But I think magic is something that I've heard in the intermittent fasting community is you're an N of one, right? An experiment of one, because our bodies are different. So everybody's a perfect diet is going to be different. So everybody's perfect spiritual practice is probably also going to be slightly different. What works the very best for you may not work for somebody else. And somebody can go do these steps and get these certain results. And there are patterns, right? Patterns of things that usually work for most people, but not everything works for everyone. And some things work really great for somebody and not for the other. So that's where experiments come in. That's why I like to call the premium members area a lab, and why we do so much experimental work in there, because I want to give people that opportunity to say, hey, let's all try this month and everybody do this 5 to 10 minute thing each day. And let's see what happens for each of us. And, your results are going to depend somewhat on your own energetic field and now I want to say beliefs, but probably more it's your action, right? Is there a Bible verse or something like faith without works is dead or something like that? So belief without action doesn't do anything for us. And even if we don't 100% believe and we take action, that's when things get really interesting and really fun. And that helps us build that belief. So that's number one, is me backpedaling on number one from the last episode, but still kind of staying in that same vein. Just adding on to it. You need action with your magic. It's kind of like I remember somebody once telling me that most people do not pray. They think about praying, but they don't actually pray. And I was like, whoa, and so that came from that Christian worldview perception. But it's the same in magic. Like, how many people maybe think about doing magic, think about setting intentions, think about what affirmation they would say without actually affirming it. So, action is like so very important. And that leads us to misconception number 2, which is all you need is magic. In the movies, we have Harry Potter with the wand, Glinda the Good Witch and the Wizard of Oz with the wand. Like there's so many misconceptions of you snap your fingers, you twitch your nose, you wave your wand, magic is done. Yay! But not that I don't believe, this word is going to haunt me throughout this whole podcast. Not that I don't have open-mindedness about the fact that that sometimes happens. But I've learned the hard way in my life that spiritual growth does not always equal personal growth or growth of any kind, to be honest with you, or skill of any time. Some people are very skilled at spiritual stuff. For me, a lot of that stuff kind of comes naturally. And don't be jealous because I'm almost 50 years old and I don't ride a bike very well. I wreck every time. So lots of things do not come naturally to me, right? So not to say that I still don't have to practice and meditate and do things like that, but that spiritual growth does not make me a better communicator. I can meditate and I can be like off in bliss land and it's really wonderful. And I have all these cool visions or downloads, but that doesn't mean that I can communicate it with you or I can write better. It definitely does not mean that I can edit better because I miss those typos sometimes. I'm improving. But yeah, that like magic is really great. But I think like sometimes we have this misconception that it can do everything and it can fix everything. I think this is the reason why we have some gurus and some teachers in the spiritual realm who give really great advice and they role model to us how to advance spiritually, but they have really bad personal relationships, or some of them have stepped the bounds and like been abusive to people who are their followers, or maybe they're a disaster with money and they mismanage things. That's just because it doesn't mean that they're a fraud necessarily in the spiritual realm, right? It just means that they may not have good money skills or good personal relationship skills, because these skills are not all the same skills, right? There is some overlap, but it's definitely not 100%. And we all know I know I can look at myself and we can look at other people out in the world and we can see some people are really good in certain areas and not as good in other areas, right? So magic cannot necessarily do that to you. Magic cannot necessarily give you a good relationship, but magic might be able to help you find a good person to be in a relationship with. They might help you find a good relationship coach. They might help you find a book or a podcast or a tool that helps you learn to be a better communicator in relationship. I find that whenever I'm doing magical practices, especially like, I say magic, but like, the core for me is really that meditation and stuff. And when I'm on my meditation game and I'm really being consistent with that, I find that a lot of things like that will come up for me, like things that I need to do personal growth work or to learn how to ride the bike better. All these things will come up to me. So it's not to say that magic isn't helpful in like pretty much every area of our life. It just can't do everything for you, right? And that's something I talked about like in personal alchemy, about a man who like wanted to attract this woman, and then he attracted the exact woman that he was picturing, or one that looked exactly like the one he was picturing, and then he couldn't ask her out on a date or really talk to her. because he hadn't made those skills. So Magick can help you find a great guitar teacher, but unless you practice the guitar and pick up the guitar, I think odds are very low. That's, to me, that's a very rare thing that you're going to just like pick up a musical instrument and be able to play it. Although I have heard things like that happening. Oh, some preacher, maybe it was Pat Robertson or something, a preacher who was a cousin to Jerry Lee Lewis, who supposedly like prayed and learned how to play piano. I don't know if that's true. I find things like that really rare, but there are instances of magicians who can manifest candy into their hands. Jesus could turn water into wine. And to me, he's one of the greatest magicians ever in the term of like a real magician, not a stage magician. Um, oh, I'm just picturing Jesus in a band right now. It's okay. But anyway, most of us, we're not at that level. And I feel like that's not even what it's really about, right? Like for me, magic is growth. Alchemy is gross. Gross. I am on a tongue twister today. Is growth, right? It's making us into more of who we actually are. And I think a lot of that requires real world work. Like if you're going to build a house, you're probably going to need a hammer and nails or a really good contractor, more than likely. But you can still use magic, right? To find the perfect blueprints or the property that you need or a good deal, or just, like magic brings the synchronicity into all these things. And it's one of our tools. It's just not the only tool. And that's why, with the premium members in my lab, we do experiments and they always have two aspects, a metaphysical and a physical, because I know that it takes action, like taking action on magic and taking actions on the thing that we need to do in the world. It's just, unfortunately, actually, I don't even think it's unfortunate, right? Because if we could just wave a wand and get what we need, then where would the growth come from? Where would that change agent of making us more of who we want to be, making us, I don't want to say a better person, because I believe that there's always that aspect of us that's already perfectly imperfect. And maybe on the non-physical realm is totally perfect. But either which way, the more we step into being that person that we already are, and a lot of that I think is relaxing, but a lot of it is also taking the actions that we need to take. Oh, paradox, paradox, paradox. I swear, I love it. Anyway, so yeah, that is number 2. The second misconception for this episode, that all you need is magic, because you definitely need a little bit more than that here in this realm. Not to say that magic doesn't make everything easier and sweeter most of the time. Okay, so third misconception, magic is evil. Ooh, we've heard that, right? I'm told by people like, oh, the Bible says that, magic and witchcraft and all that stuff is evil. Or we also hear, magic is just love, or it's just light, love and light, right? My personal belief, there's that word again, that dicey, dicey word. Magic is a force, right? Like electricity that we can tap into and use. It's all around us. It's the fabric of our universe. It's right here. I kind of feel like it's what holds everything together. The prima materia of alchemy, the source, that source energy that everything comes from. In a way, to me, magic could actually be a synonym for God. Because to me, God is that energy of everything. It's the one thing that we all are. And in a way, I feel like that's like magic. And I don't know. I've played around with this too, because there are different terms that we talk about in science. And like, y'all, I am not the science person, but I find it very interesting, even though I'm not that person that qualified to say anything. But sometimes I'm like magic and ether, or magic and like whatever it is, that thing that is everywhere that nothing else is, and everywhere that everything else is, that's magic to me. And so I think that we use magic, do magic, are enmeshed in magic, whether we know it or not. And maybe you have a different word other than magic. But hey, I like magic, so I roll with it that way. But when we say things or think things over and over, we create spells. Or, I don't even know what that sound was. Even curses, right? And a lot of times those curses are curses to ourselves because, there was a saying around a while back, and I don't want to bring it back because I haven't heard it for a while, but FML. And for those of you who don't know, that was the fuck my life, or anything that we would say over and over in our heads, like, oh, my back hurts, my back hurts. Well, you're creating things that you don't want to create. So I think that being a magician, a witch, an alchemist, an LOA practitioner, deliberate creator, whatever you call yourself, it is about intentionally engaging this force called magic to change your world. And I would add for the better, right? We don't want to make things worse. Although I do want to say, I believe that we should all, I need one of those clickers to count how many times I'm going to say believe in this podcast. Anyway, I think we should all be doing magic. Whatever way works for you. If you do affirmations, if you do spell work, if you do rituals, if you do vision boards, if you do plant magic, if you make tinctures, if you make alchemical oils, whatever you do, I think that everybody intentionally using magic and making something better in this world is really important. And the reason I think that is because magic can be used for good or evil or anything in between, right? But if you think for 1 minute there are people in this world who aren't using this force for evil, then you've obviously never binge listened to any conspiracy theory podcasts ever, okay? I'm kidding, just a little bit, but seriously, I don't know if there is a scary Illuminati cabal out there to take over the world and make us into worker slaves or not. But I do know that there are people who use magic, even whether or not they know it or not. But I'm going to say that I pretty much believe that they do because you can look at some of the marketing stuff that's out there. Anyway, I believe there are those who use it for evil. And they curse us with misinformation and dangerous products for their financial gain. They use glamours to suck us into buying products that we don't need or want. And I could go on and on and on about this. And I try not to because that's not what Daily Alchemy is about. Daily Alchemy is about having as many people as I can muster to decide to make every single day a container for alchemy, personal alchemy, spiritual alchemy, magic in your life to create a better world for yourself. And in doing so, for all the other people around you. I think it's important because I look at things and sometimes there's some scary things going on in our world. And, I don't think we can necessarily magic them away, but we can create something to replace them, right? We can create a better life for ourselves and a better life for the people around us. And, I say magic is not all love and light. And, sometimes I use magic to block things that feel evil in my life and to freeze them out of my life. And I think that's a perfectly fine use of magic. But most of all, I focus on creating a life that feels good to me. And one thing that feels really good to me is helping other people feel good too. So, not to go too Pollyanna, but it wasn't all bad. I implore you to use magic to make things better for yourself and to stand up against evil as well. And with that paradox, we also have used action to stand up against evil and action to create good. But I think magic, it's just a force that can help us. It can make it easier, it can smooth out the rough edges. And I like living in a more enchanted world. So sue me. All right. So I did not give you an experiment last time. And this is kind of a continuation of last time. And so here's what I would like for you to play with if you feel so called, is to pick one magical practice that just you can't believe in. Maybe it's Reiki, maybe it's tapping, maybe it's working with a plant and doing plant magic, and give it a try and try it for 30 days and make notes. Make notes in your Moon and Magick planner or somewhere to let you know how it goes over time. And then reach out and let me know how it went. I'm really curious as to how this all works with whether or not we believe in something and whether or not it works for us. Because I know for me, belief isn't necessarily required. Action definitely is. And then somewhere along that spectrum of faith and hope. So, all right, let's all just tap into the magic, re-enchant our world, one intention, one spell, one alchemical transformation at a time. And until then, let's be change-making descendants, future exalted ancestors, and let's live magically in the now. All right, peace out until next time.